Kiss of Death. The KGB's lipstick pistol, nicknamed the Kiss of Death, is a concealed single-shot handgun disguised as a cosmetic tube. It was built for clandestine assassination or an emergency strike at contact distance, where a hidden device is more valuable than a service sidearm. The concept appears in Cold War seizures and museum pieces, including an example discovered at a West Berlin checkpoint in 1965 that later entered public collections and spy lore. The tube disguises a rudimentary zip gun mechanism. A hollow body doubles as a barrel, and a twist or push action cocks a small striker to set off a bespoke miniature round. Sources often place the projectile around the 4.5 mm class, but the exact cartridge is less important than the fact that each device carries its one shot internally with no provision for a follow-up. The ammunition is non-standard, unique to the specific tube's dimensions and primer setup, which prevents interchange with common service calibers and complicates any idea of resupply. In practice, it is sensitive to fouling and alignment, and any misfire leaves an operator with a useless tube. Performance is limited to arm's length. Effective range is measured in inches, not meters, and terminal effect trails far behind conventional pistols. Portability is excellent because it passes casual inspection, but long-term storage is constrained by bespoke ammunition that does not tolerate casual caching. Historically, these devices were produced in small batches for intelligence services and remain scarce. Today, they are demilitarized museum items and collector curios. Among collectors and students of tradecraft, the lipstick pistol persists as an icon of Cold War ingenuity with narrow real-world utility. Turbiaux palm squeezer Jacques E. Turbiaux's 1882 design, sold as the Le Protecteur, and in the United States as the Protector or disc pistol, sought deep concealment in an era before modern pocket autos. The form factor resembles a pocket watch that nests in the palm, fired by squeezing the fist rather than pulling a trigger with an index finger. Chambering centered on tiny rimfire rounds, most notably .32 extra short, also marketed as .32 Protector, with some examples marked 6 mm and 8 mm. As a result, logistics are inherently obsolete, and conversion work is specialist territory, mechanically. The pistol is a palm-indexed revolver with a 7 or 8-shot rotating disc, no conventional sights, and a squeeze-to-fire system that advances the chamber and releases the striker. Reliability depends on rimfire quality and careful handling of miniature parts. The design's virtue is surprise at contact distance. Beyond that, the small cartridge and lack of sights limit effectiveness. There is no platform-level modularity. Field maintenance requires fine tools and patience. Small screws, springs, and extractors are not interchangeable with other guns. Performance belongs to the grappling envelope. It can deter or injure at arm's length, but hunting or aimed defensive fire is unrealistic. The pistol's small size makes it easy to cache or wear discreetly. Historically, several thousand were produced separate runs in Minneapolis and Chicago, with surviving examples drawing interest from collectors of concealed weapons and late Victorian novelties. Today, the Turbiaux Protector is best understood as a clever concealment concept whose ammunition and maintenance profile render it an historical study rather than an everyday tool. Richardson Industries M5. Elif Richardson's post-war guerrilla gun, often labeled the M5 in period write-ups, draws directly from improvised Filipino resistance shotguns. It is a crude, single-shot slam-fire design meant for ambush, immediate violence at very short range, and the opportunistic capture of superior arms. Richardson, a U.S. veteran with wartime experience alongside Filipino guerrillas, produced basic and deluxe civilian versions after the war. The action is a mechanical slam-fire. A fixed firing pin sits in the receiver, and the barrel assembly is shoved rearward to strike the primer. The basic unit lacks a true trigger. Deluxe versions add a trigger that functions as a barrel release. These materials make the gun deceptively reliable. In its narrow use case, few parts exist to break, but they also create variable chamber sealing, rough extraction, and loose patterning. Safe ammunition selection is critical. The source material describes light birdshot and mini shells as workable. Heavy buckshot or high-pressure loads risk structural failure given unknown metallurgy. Shells are bulky compared with pistol cartridges, and pattern consistency is poor. Maintenance is straightforward in principle. Swab a smoothbore tube and keep the firing pin free of debris, yet corrosion and case sticking are common in rough tubes. On the range, accuracy is dictated by distance and luck more than sights. The gun's size and shape make it stashable, if not truly concealable. Historically, accessibility was high in the sense of price and simplicity, not in numbers produced. Today, examples surface as curios rather than practical arms. Comparable concepts include improvised pipe guns across multiple conflicts and regions. Within survival circles, the Richardson gun is respected for what it is, a working embodiment of expedient manufacture, while its tactical value is judged as last ditch. Dolne Apache. The Dolne Apache pinfire revolver combines a folding knuckle duster, a small folding blade, and a pepperbox cylinder into one pocketable tool. Built in Liege workshops in the 1860s and 1870s and associated with the Parisian street gangs known as Les Apaches, it aimed to maximize options in a brawl strike, stab, or fire multiple tiny charges at grappling range. The typical chambering is 7mm Lefaucheux pinfire, an obsolete cartridge whose external pin makes modern stocking impractical. Reloading is slow because the cylinder must be removed from the frame and charged individually. With no real barrel, just the chamber mouths at the cylinder face and no sights. Accuracy falls away almost immediately beyond arm's length. Folding geometry is the defining feature. The brass knuckle duster swings over the cylinder for pocket carry. A small knife folds out from the grip area. Maintenance is serviceable for cleaning and basic spring replacements, but relies on bespoke parts. Performance is exactly what the shape implies, useful only when bodies are close. Variants show minor differences among Belgian makers. Collectors prize the type for its evocative role in urban criminal history. For modern preppers, the appeal is academic. Obsolete ammunition, fragile mechanisms, and minimal range limit the design to study rather than field use. LeMat grapeshot. Jean-Alexandre LeMat's revolver answers a very specific cavalry problem. Carry a service sidearm that fires multiple pistol shots and a single blast of shot for close-in shock. Patented in the United States in 1856, developed in New Orleans with early backing from PEGT Beauregard, and later produced in Liege and Paris with Birmingham proofing on shipments. The revolving shotgun concept reached Confederate officers by blockade. The architecture is distinctive. A 9-shot cap and ball cylinder surrounds a central smoothbore barrel. A lever on the hammer diverts the striker between percussion caps on the cylinder and the primer for the shotgun bore. Early revolver caliber was around .42 ball, with later production closer to .36 or .44. The central bore is reported between roughly 16 and 28 gauge across production. A jointed ramrod on the frame assists loading both systems, and fixed sights provide a simple reference. Logistics during the war were complicated. Owners often cast their own bullets for non-standard chamber sizes, while percussion caps and black powder were easier to source than uniform cartridges. Later evolutions appeared in pinfire and centerfire, including formats associated with 12mm Perrin or 11mm Camelot Delvigne, alongside a roughly 24-gauge shot barrel. But these cartridge versions never eclipsed the original percussion model. On the range, expectations should reflect the design goal. The revolver barrel is serviceable to short distances, with period references around 40 yards and upper limits quoted higher under ideal conditions. Accuracy is modest, especially compared to later fixed cartridge revolvers, but the combined 9 shots and 1 shotgun charge deliver decisive near-contact capability. Maintenance reflects the cap and ball era. A user with powder, caps, lead, and a mold can keep it running independently, which mattered when supply chains were fragile. In the modern era, reproductions by Pieta since the mid-1980s keep the idea accessible, while original cartridge variants remain scarce. Among historians, the LeMat represents a bold attempt to merge 2 weapon classes into one holster, a choice that succeeded tactically at very short range while conceding bulk, cost, and accuracy. Sedgley OSS .38, developed in 1944 under U.S. Navy auspices and built by the Sedgley Company of Philadelphia. The hand-firing mechanism, MSK2, transforms a punch into a gunshot. The device mounts on a leather glove and fires a single .38 special round at contact distance when a spring-loaded plunger at the knuckles is driven into the target. Surviving examples and records suggest extremely limited production, often cited between 52 and 200 units, and a user set that included Marines, Navy personnel, and possibly OSS elements in the Pacific. The action is a simple break barrel with an external plunger that releases the hammer. Construction is blued steel riveted to a curved backplate, then attached to cowhide. Ammunition commonality is the key advantage. .38 Special is ubiquitous, and subsonic or standard pressure loads pair well with the short, smoothbore barrel. There is no provision for rapid reload under stress. It is a one-shot emergency weapon. Evidence on some museum pieces shows holes through glove fingers, a reminder that accidental discharge was a genuine risk if the plunger was depressed inadvertently. There is no modularity or variant ecosystem. The Mk2 pattern defines the type. Conceptual relatives include other clandestine weapons of the era, such as the British Wellrod, or the FP-45 Liberator, and later glove pistols reportedly made in Soviet service. The Sedgley device occupies a narrow part of wartime equipment history, where engineers prioritized a single scenario, a worker or combatant who appears unarmed until a strike becomes a gunshot. Krnka M1867, Larache M1870. Sylvester Krnka's breech conversion answered Russia's urgent need to modernize a vast inventory of muzzle-loading muskets at minimal cost. Adopted in 1869 after trials, the system converted the Model 1857 six-line percussion musket into a single-shot center-fire breechloader, with frontline service extending through the Russo-Turkish War of 1877–1878 and secondary use into the early 20th century. The action is a lifting block breech operated by a top lever that swings the block to one side, exposing the chamber for loading. Conversion rifles reused stocks, barrels reamed and modified, and lockworks where possible, keeping manufacturing simple and costs low. The cartridge was 15. 24x40 mmMR, also called the six-line Russian, built from drawn brass cases. An expanding base bullet with a metal plug, improved gas sealing, and slightly oversized bores. Wartime experience introduced pragmatic flexibility. Captured Turkish 11mm Peabody Martini and Snyder cartridges could be fired in some guns with poor accuracy. Line troop effective ranges around 280–420 meters were typical, with sharpshooter sights graduated further. Compared to the Berdan or Martini Henry, the Krnka was heavier and slower, but its reliability in grime and weather made it a dependable service piece. Variants included infantry, sharpshooter, and dragoon models with differences in length, sight leaves, hammers, and sling placement. Field stripping is uncomplicated, and cleaning is frequent due to black powder fouling. Today, surviving examples are antiques, often encountered as utilitarian smoothbores in rural histories. For students of small arms evolution, the Krnka illustrates how a state can repurpose obsolete inventory into serviceable breechloaders and later extend their life again in civilian hands. Hand mortar. The hand mortar is an early attempt to project fused grenades by firearm rather than by throwing them. Examples appear from the late 17th through 18th centuries, with attributions in period and curatorial notes to figures such as John Tinker and Menno van Cohoorn. The device uses a very short, large-bore cup mounted to a stock and a lock matchlock, wheel lock, or flintlock depending on date. Misfires could leave a burning grenade in the bore, and any scheme to light the fuse from the gun's main charge risked driving the flame into the grenade body itself. Projectiles included explosive shells made of brass or glass and incendiaries, all dependent on reliable fuses. In service, the idea was eclipsed by grenadiers throwing by hand and later, by dedicated crew-served mortars that separated the explosive from the shooter. As artifacts, 17th and 18th century hand mortars are rare and reside in museums or private collections. The design's reputation is that of a hazardous branch on the tree of grenade launching technology, useful today for illustrating the challenges of fuse timing and early explosive ordnance handling. Heckler Koch P11. Heckler Koch P11 is a purpose-built underwater pistol introduced in the 1970s and fielded from 1977 by Naval Special Operations divers. Conventional handgun bullets destabilize almost immediately in water. The P11 addresses that with steel flechettes and an electrically fired sealed 5-barrel pack. The pistol fires from a fixed 5-barrel module, each barrel holding a single cartridge. Underwater loads are steel darts carried in sabots. An alternate sealed pack holds heavier bullets for above-water use. A single pack yields 5 shots before the entire module must be returned to the manufacturer for reloading. Effective range in air hovers around 30 meters. Underwater, 10 to 15 meters is the working envelope. Reliability hinges on two factors uncommon to most pistols' battery management and the integrity of sealed barrel units. Field maintenance covers external cleaning and battery swaps. There is no user service of the ammunition module. Modularity is limited to swapping barrel packs optimized for water or air. The platform has no caliber conversions, box magazines, or user-filled cartridges. For modern general users, the P11's reliance on proprietary packs and factory reloads confines it to the specialized maritime niche that created it. Calico M950 Calico Light Weapon Systems M950 is a semi-automatic 9.19mm pistol designed around a top-mounted helical magazine. In an era that explored unconventional feeding systems, the M950 promised extremely high-capacity 50 or 100 rounds in a compact form that could be configured as a pistol or, in related variants, as a carbine. The action is roller-delayed blowback, an uncommon choice in pistols that helps manage recoil impulses from the heavy magazine perched above the slide. The helical drum also forms the rear sight housing, and the high sight overbore geometry creates a pronounced point-of-impact offset at very short ranges. Magazine loading requires a specific spring tensioning routine, and consistent feeding depends on following that process carefully. Logistically, the chambering is a strength. 9.19mm is globally common and stores well if kept dry. The weak link is the proprietary magazine. It is mechanically complex, not widely available, and not compatible with other platforms. Field stripping the pistol itself is simple, usually by separating upper and lower with a single pin. Magazine maintenance demands more care. Performance slots into the defensive envelope out to roughly 100 meters. The roller delay and rearward mass improve controllability, especially when the platform is configured with a stock or brace in carbine form. Variants include the visually similar 22 LR-M1, which does not share parts with the 9mm line, and factory carbine configurations. Practical alternatives in the same role tend to fall back on AR pattern, AK pattern, or PDW platforms with robust box magazine ecosystems. Within enthusiast communities, the M950 endures as a technically interesting approach to capacity that trades magazine simplicity for round count. If this was useful, tap like. Share it with your fellow gun geeks, and subscribe for more deep dive explainers. And if there's a model or oddball design you'd like to see next, drop your suggestions in the comments. Thanks for tuning in.